What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second episode of the Interesting Enough podcast, the show where two guys get together once a week to talk about all sorts of topics ranging from video games to pop culture. Why? Because they're just interesting enough to do so. I am one of your hosts, Malik Rahili, and I am joined by the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. Corey Spires.
What's going on, everybody?
Corey, how are you doing today?
You know, I'm doing all right. I'm actually in Richmond, Virginia, celebrating my mom's marriage. So I am hanging out in the hotel room, talking to my bro here.
Awesome. Well, first week was crazy. Had trillions of downloads. We are literally a hit. We have flown off the shelves, as so to speak, with our first episode, and we're here to bring the people the second episode of the Interesting Enough podcast.
IGN had a feature on us, and we got some exposure through that.
Yeah, you know, things are going real good. I've already signed a deal with Apple to start working for them and to be the head of their podcast division. So yeah, things are going really good for us.
Sounds like we're trimming upward, going north.
Yeah. Haven't just been sitting watching the view counter, which most of our views have probably been from us.
Secrets.
Okay. So the way this show is going to work from here on out. Last week was an episode just to get to know us, to get to understand who we are as both gamers and as people. And from here on out, we're going to start bringing topics to discuss on the show for people's amusement. So, Corey, why don't you kick us off with your first topic?
Sure. So today, in my boredom in the hotel room, I am obviously unable to play any games, and it's killing me. So what I've been doing is watching game trailers pretty much nonstop, and also some of my favorite podcasters as well. But one of the things I was watching a lot of material on was, of course, one of my most anticipated releases of the year, Fallout 4. As you know, I was a ginormous fan of Fallout 3.
Mm-hmm.
So needless to say, I'm extremely excited for 4, and I was watching the gameplay trailer. I actually hadn't seen the full gameplay trailer until today. So I got to take a look at that, and it led me to starting to think, why did I pour 150 plus hours into Fallout? And then that led me to think about how much fun I had with The Witcher this year. So my question for you, and our jumping off point here, is what is it that makes you enjoy an RPG? What is it that lets you, because I know you're a fan of the genre too, so what is it that when you put 100 hours into an RPG, what factors are present there for you?
Okay, so you're asking why. What makes me put 100 hours into an RPG?
Right, because there's RPGs that I play, like Persona. I played it for a little bit, liked it, but I didn't pour a lot of time into it. Yet I poured hundreds of hours into Fallout. Why is that?
Okay, all right. This is a very interesting topic because I think we touched on this a couple weeks ago when The Witcher was out and we were playing it. I think this is a doozy.
It definitely gets you thinking. It's one of those things you kind of have to examine what it is about these games you enjoy and sum it up.
Yeah. I definitely think one of the most important things for me to put so much time into an RPG is I want to say it is the world. The world is very, very crucial.
Sure.
If I do not like the world I'm in, I don't want to put the time into it.
You don't want to play the role in that world.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be a character walking around a world I don't care about.
Sure.
And I think, I think having a role playing game that makes you feel like you are a character is great. Having a good combat system, having a good story is also great. But I think the atmosphere and the world that is created is one of the most important things. Skyrim would not be one of my favorite RPGs if I didn't give a crap about the world and the people in it and the characters in it, just because that is basically, in my opinion, the essence of a role-playing game. To be in that world, to role-play in that world,
Sure.
It has to be good. I love the world of The Witcher. I thought it was great how you were this guy and you just would ride across a wasteland full of, monsters and people and villages, and they all counted on you to stop monsters and to go out and do contracts for them or to help them out when they needed it. I thought that was fantastic, and when the world is great, it will keep me locked in for hours and keep me coming back. One of the most notable worlds that I love is Pokemon, and I mentioned this last week. The Pokemon world is freaking cool, and and when I say the Pokemon world, I'm talking about the original 151
Sure. Kanto.
world and the Kanto, and the second generation of Pokemon. It's a world where you go out in the wild and you catch these Pokemon, and then you put them together and fight them. And
you force them to battle each other into the death, and then you revive them with a potion.
Yeah, Michael Vick was one of the lead game designers behind it.
Oh
no! And I thought that world was awesome as a kid. A world where I can go out in the wild and catch a creature and keep him as my companion. That's freaking awesome.
Companion or slave? I mean, I'm just saying there could be some PETA suits coming your way.
Oh yeah, yeah, PETA. That world was just enthralling to me. And I would travel the map, fight gym leaders, get my Pokemon to level up and stuff like that. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So I would say the world is the most important thing to me. After that is the character. I think the character is also very crucial in a role-playing game for me to put time into it. And where I start to struggle and diverge is when an RPG gives me too much freedom over the character.
Yep,
and I've started to realize that. Yeah, and I love Skyrim. I love Oblivion. I love Elder Scrolls Online. I love Diablo. Those are all great titles. But when I'm given the option to change every little feature about my character's face, change what class I want to be, I can literally be hundreds of different classes. That's when I start to pull back a little bit. That's when I start to not want to put as much time into it, because I think to myself, if I'm going to be putting 100 hours into this, I want to be doing something cool.
Sure.
So I want to play the mage and cast cool spells, or I want to be the warrior and use awesome heavy armor. And I struggle with that with every RPG that comes out.
Yeah.
And it's super hard to deal with. But a game like Mass Effect, when the character classes really aren't too different from each other, and the main character is really, you can make your own character, but really we can all agree that the main character of Mass Effect is John Shepard.
Sure.
Like the iconic John Shepard, that's the character just as much as Geralt is the character of The Witcher. And those are both great characters to play as and to live again in that world and be. So I would say the world first, and then having a great character you want to be without being overwhelmed is what makes a good RPG for me.
It's interesting you bring up the character progression thing, because I'm obviously a little biased because it's one of my favorite games of all time, but I thought Fallout 3 did a good job of that because you had the perks. But I mean, the perks weren't game-altering things, you know what I mean? Like, and there wasn't really a class. Like, you didn't say, oh, I want to be a scientist or a big guns guy, but you sort of catered your way to that by assigning the skill points. But at the same time, it's like, I remember I had like 19 energy weapon skill and like 100 small gun skill by the time I was at 30, but like I still used laser weapons and I was still okay, you know what I mean? Like it didn't make a too terribly big difference. And then you can get the gun nut perk, and it was just like, it felt to me like there wasn't like oh, you're a mage, or oh, you're a tank. So I mean, I respected that about Fallout. And I liked the way that The Witcher did it too. I thought the leveling system in The Witcher was actually pretty shitty in terms of like the shit that you got assigned for skill trees. It didn't seem to make much of a difference to me. Oh, you increase your Axii sign by 0.2%, however the fuck I'd be able to tell I did that. But I did respect the fact that it wasn't like, oh, you're the archer variant of Geralt, or you're the swordsman. Like, you were just Geralt, and and you got to sort of structure your character to a certain degree. But I liked that. And I think along with that, the one thing that keeps me playing an RPG is I like a constant sense of progression. Because I mean, obviously, the sole essence of an RPG is when you think RPG, you're usually thinking leveling up, picking skills, stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I enjoy RPGs that, and I know it's kind of shitty a day and age where it's like, oh, you get an achievement for pressing start. But I mean, like, I like an RPG where it's like you discovered a new location, you get experience points, which is another thing that Fallout did well. Or, you crafted your first item, here's some experience points. It just kind of makes it feel like everything that you do has a purpose. And then, in completing side quests and stuff, and that giving you an experience boost makes me feel like even if I'm playing the game for, I only have 10 minutes to fire it up and play for a minute, but I discover a location and I craft a new item, I've gotten experience. I'm a higher level technically than I was 10 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you brought all that up with the character progression and stuff. Um, One thing I wanted to also touch on with my topic is, or not my topic, my point. I I love having the ability to create my own character. And like you said, you liked Fallout because you didn't get locked into a mage or a warrior or anything like that. It also brings up the fact that like Bethesda is perfect at the Western RPG
Yes.
formula.
Yes.
I think it is hard to find a Western RPG that can beat a Bethesda game.
Sure.
And I mean, you can argue that BioWare comes very close,
They
and
do.
BioWare does make a good run for their money with Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, um, Dragon Age.
Yep.
But yeah, Dragon Age. But I think Bethesda has the Western RPG formula perfected. It's fantastic. And one thing I did also like about Skyrim is it didn't lock me into like being a major warrior. To an extent, it did, and as you got deeper into the game, you were essentially locked in. But if you wanted to dabble in magic, you can go do it. If you wanted to get your archery skill up, you can also do that. And it didn't keep you in the handcuffs of picking one class. And like you said with the perks in Fallout, I also think that's great. And this is actually something that I've discovered. I said I like having like one character, not given to me, but I like having a narrative in a role playing
Sure.
game. Obviously, level
Sure.
progression is very important to me, and that all that other mechanics of an RPG is very important. But with something like Mass Effect and The Witcher, where you have that up front and center character, I like creating my own character, but I also like having a main character that I really care about. However, the one genre I don't care about this at all in is Japanese RPGs. And I try so hard to get into a Japanese RPG where really there isn't a character customization. There is a central character or characters involved, and you play as one of them.
You level them up,
And
but they don't particularly have different skills or
yeah,
abilities.
and they have their own storyline, and it's very in depth. That
Sure.
is one genre I cannot for the life of me get into. And
I find that
I
most
don't
of
know.
those JRPGs have like 36 games in the series before the one that's out right now. So it's like you
Yeah.
gotta go back to like PSP and play like number two to know who the characters are. That's one of the off-putting things about JRPGs to me, and that's probably because I'm a Western bastard, and so I'm like, oh, give me my Fallout. But it's a
Yeah.
genre I'd like to get into as well. But
Yeah, and like me and Corey had a strange time in our lives where we had a PlayStation TV, and we both got Persona, and Persona was a fantastic game. Don't get me wrong, it was great. Loved the story, loved the atmosphere of it, loved the world,
it was cool.
but there's just something about JRPGs that don't sit well with me. I don't know. It's like that. Since I know I'm going to put 250 hours into a JRPG, it almost makes me not want to do it.
It's funny because it's like the Western RPG and the JRPG to me are so like it's like they're two different planets. Like I'm just comfortable with putting hundreds of hours, and I put hundreds of hours in the Fable 2, for example, and I went around and hunted every single godforsaken gargoyle and
Hmm.
got every small key, and then Fallout I played every side quest. But then, with a JRPG, I think it's like they're just enough out of our element as Western gamers that sometimes it's like you just have to just stick with it. It's almost like trying a different food. You know what I mean? Like you might like it
Yeah.
in small doses, but if you're gonna eat it every night, you have to sort of develop a taste for it. And I think a lot of JRPGs are like that because they have conventions that aren't necessarily things we're used to here. Like sure they have the basic RPG conventions that we know and love, but they also have different kinds of stuff and like subtle nuances that we're just not used to as Western gamers. So I think that there's definitely a learning curve there almost.
Yeah, and going back to the mechanics of an RPG and what makes me love them, there is a this is this is gonna sound again like you said, making me sound like a privileged American bastard or Western bastard, where I don't like turn-based systems, and that's funny because I love Pokemon, but that's not really
It's not your
that
prototypical
that's a very simplistic
Sure.
turn-based
It's
system.
like attack, use item, or run. And
Yeah,
you can't run for 75% of the game anyway, so.
yeah.
Or
I don't
change
have to worry
Pokemon.
about. Yeah, I don't have to worry about utilizing my teammates and then also making sure that I'm defending and then also make sure I'm using potions or
I
attacking and stuff like that.
I hate when RPGs give you the option to defend because I never feel like I'm doing it enough. But then like if I
Yeah,
do it too much, I'm not doing any damage. Like at least with Pokemon, it's like nobody uses fucking Growl and nobody uses fucking Leer, but I can just forget those in favor of Body Slam at level
you
21.
know, there's that group of guys that swear by all of those status
I
effect moves.
I think
Oh,
they're full of
growl
yeah, they're
is
full of shit.
yeah.
Like, oh yeah, use
um,
mean look. Like, nah, just fucking
yeah.
use hyper beam.
Yeah, but there's just something about it being a first-person shooter like Fallout or a first-person melee combat game like Oblivion, or even a game where you use buttons to like that have map to skills, that also combine sort of a, I don't want to say like a button masher, but like you use right trigger to attack and left trigger to defend, like The
Right.
Witcher. But you also have buttons that do different effects. I think that for me is more appealing than having to sit there and wait for my teammate to cast some spell that I can't read the name of
Sure.
in a turn-based strategy game that I don't care about.
The game that did that well was exactly how you described it as Diablo, and I know
Mm-hmm.
you were a big fan of it. I was too. Diablo 3, and yeah, there's just I don't know, and like you could probably talk to people randomly who play games, they would say the exact opposite. I prefer turn-based over having button map too, but I mean like it just kind of depends on what you fucking like. And to me,
Yeah,
Diablo is perfect because it's like I can see what spells I have and I can cast them whenever they're ready, and it's intuitive to me, and so it makes
yeah,
sense and it allows me to kind of focus on the game world and the character progression. So, and with as many enemies as are on screen in Diablo at one time, it kind of needs to be simplistic.
yeah. Our RPGs are a very interesting genre where if one of the mechanics is off, it can ruin the whole game for you. If the world is not good, the game is ruined. If the story also, which we didn't really touch on the story of RPGs, I think the story of RPGs are also very important.
It
If
is,
you have a
it is. I think the main story obviously is important, but a main story I think can be saved by side quests. And the
yeah,
reason I
I
say it
agree.
is because I think the Fallout 3 story, as much as I love that game, I think the Fallout 3 story is kind of shit. It's like, yeah, you're going to go bottle some water with your fucking dad, and that's the entire
Bottle
main
some
story.
water.
You're going to get some fucking Aquafina in the downtown DC area with your dad, Liam Neeson. And you're just going there on a journey. But like, and I thought that fucking sucked. But like, there are so many memorable side quests in Fallout. Like, yeah, when you go to Vault 87, and was it 108 with the Gary clones? And then like, the side
Gary.
quests like Gary, the side quests where it's like, shit, the Big Trouble in Big Town with the little kids and like the
Uh huh.
Andale ants. There's just so many memorable side quests that like, sure, the main storyline kind of sucks ass, but and like maybe it's because I didn't play the other Witcher games, but I thought the Witcher 3 main story kind of sucks too. It was just like, oh yeah, Ciri fucking got kidnapped, let's go find her, and then that's the entire story. You're just chasing Ciri around.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't as bad as the Fallout story, but it wasn't great. But that game had great side quests again and an immersive world, and so like you didn't necessarily think about, oh well, this is kind of lame because you're only playing one main storyline mission per every 5 hours. And I think that's a delicate balance. You either load it up with good main quests or you load it up with side quests.
Yeah. Yeah, RPGs are my favorite genre now. It used to be first-person shooters, but honestly, at this point, with a lot of the games nowadays, it is very hard to find a game that isn't influenced by RPG games.
Oh, sure.
Hell, even Madden and sport games now have RPG elements in them.
Yeah. And like MLB The Show, I know has like a gear system now, like a loot system where you get like new batting gloves. And it equips you, it boosts your batting power, shit like that.
I just beat the Braves and got this exotic glove.
exotic bat. The legendary Louisville Slugger. It was an orange drop.
It was an orange drop. Had to fight Louisville. Had to fight Louis himself.
Had to do the Steven Strasberg boss fight in Nationals Park.
Yeah.
And with RPGs, I think they're also the genre that I've played like the most in a single sitting. Which, here's a question for you: longest gaming session, just nonstop. What is
it's
it?
funny you bring that up because that was also with an RPG.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I think that's most gaming sessions for people, unless you're like super into like Call of Duty or something. Longest gaming session for me was 17 hours.
Damn.
And then I took a 4-hour nap, woke up, and finished off 3 hours.
Nice.
So really, I mean, it was 20 hours of, if you take out the sleep, it was 20 hours of gaming. But for plop down in front of the TV, staring at the screen, it
burning
was
holes in your retinas. It was 17
yeah,
hours.
getting hemorrhoids because you haven't moved. It was 17 hours, and it was some of the best times I've had while playing a video game. It was Dragon Age Origins for the Xbox 360.
Okay.
I got Dragon Age Origins for Christmas, and I didn't play it because it was the same sort of deal where anytime I get an RPG that gives me a lot of options, it takes me a year before I actually start it, pretty much.
Sure, because you're jumping around different characters, trying to decide who you want to commit to.
Yeah, with Dragon Age Origins, I did not figure out what character I wanted to be, and then finally, after like a year, I heard about Dragon Age 2 starting to come out, because I got Dragon Age Origins, late in its life cycle. I didn't get it like on launch day or anything.
Right.
So Dragon Age 2 was around the corner, and I told myself I wanted to play it because it looked awesome. And so I was like, well, I need to go play Dragon Age Origins and get, and get the full story, understand the world that I will be playing in. And I sat down and I started it multiple times, but for some reason it was a slow burn to start after you picked your character. And I forced myself through it, and man, after you become the Grey Warden in Dragon Age Origins, the story just opens up, and it becomes a awesome adventure. And I literally couldn't put it down for 17 hours, and I wanted to beat the game, and so I played through it. I got all the way up to the Archdemon, or not all the way up to Archdemon. I got to... It was like the section right before the Archdemon. And then I was like, I need to go to bed because I'm fucking exhausted. So then I cut it off, went to sleep, woke up, and finished the game. So yeah, that's my longest gaming session.
Couldn't you guess what mine was? You probably can. Or I may have told you before.
I think you have, but I can't guess. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, we've already talked about it, but it was Fallout.
Okay.
And I distinctly remember it was a Saturday night / Sunday night. Well, Sunday morning, I guess I should say. And I remember that would have been like, what, 2008 or 9, so I was still in, like, just beginning high school. Is that right? And
2009, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember on Sunday mornings, my dad would always wake me up for church at about 7 o'clock, 7:15 sometimes, if I was lucky. And he would come in and wake me up and would force me to go to church, and obviously, um, I, if given the choice, would not have gone to the early service. I would have gone to a later one so I could sleep in. But he would force me to go to the early one, and I remember staying up, and he wouldn't really tell me when to go to bed. He would just come to wake me up. And I remember sitting there in my room playing Fallout, and it was like well, it was earlier, and that was like 7 o'clock because I just finished dinner. And I started doing some side quests. And speaking of the Big Trouble in Big Town quest, I did that one, and I did a bunch of side quests. And I looked up, and it was like 4 a.m. So I'd been playing for like 9 hours. And I was like, well, I have to be up in like 3 hours, so I should go to bed. But I put in another hour. I remember I explored the Deathclaw Sanctuary, which is nightmare fuel, and I found the bobblehead that was in there. And then, so I went to bed at like 5 o'clock, so that was like a 10-hour session. Obviously bathroom breaks and chip breaks and things like that, but it was like 10 hours, and then I went to bed at like a little after 5, and then waking up at 7, I was probably the most tired I've ever been in my life, and I remember stumbling into the shower like a drunk bastard, like fumbling around because I couldn't see a damn thing because my eyes were all blurry because I was so sleepy. And but I got back from church, my Xbox was still running, and I put in a couple more hours. So probably a little less than you, but probably around 12 hours.
All right.
Also put in a lot of
Acceptable.
time on BioShock when that first came out. I think it was also a Saturday night at my dad's house, and I put in like 8 or 9 straight hours. Not quite as much as my Fallout run, but I plowed through a really good portion of BioShock 1's story that night. So another great game.
Um, I haven't done a long gaming session like 17 hours in a while. However, Batman Arkham Knight was probably my most recent lengthy game session.
I remember you telling me about that game session.
It's rare that I get to play video games for an exorbitant amount of time.
Sure,
because
when you're
once
an
school
adult,
starts,
unfortunately, you have less time.
Yeah. And once school starts and I'm back up there, it's hard to get even a 5-hour game session in, unless it's the weekend,
right?
And even then you're still busy doing homework.
You have friends and commitments, and it's just a big mess. But yeah,
let's be real, we didn't have friends.
That's true. We had commitments to our studies, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Our girlfriends who put up with us for whatever reason.
Yeah. But anyway, back when I was playing Arkham Knight, I beat the game, and I didn't say I was going to platinum it, but I wanted to 100% it. And so I had to go get all the Riddler trophies, which was a pain in the ass. So I spent about a week and a half getting all the getting all the Riddler trophies.
The Wiggler trophies. They're the people from Mario on a trophy.
Getting all the Riddler trophies, and that took about a week and a half. And then after I did that, there was an achievement I saw, or a trophy, because I played it on the PS4. I saw the trophy for beating the game twice, and I was like, oh, I will never do that. That's not going to happen. And then after I beat the Riddler trophy, I was like, I'm not done with this game. I still want to be Batman. I still want to live in this world. I still want to play Batman. So I was like, all right, fine. Let's see how far we can get in the main story. And thinking back on it, like, the story actually isn't that long if you really think about it.
Yeah. What was it, like less than 10 hours probably?
It's really all of the side quests and stuff that increases the longevity of that game. But what I did was I got up, and I had just beaten the game the night before, and I got up, and it was the very first part of Arkham Knight where you have to fly over to the GCPD and talk to Jim Gordon, and that was where I left off. And so I got there in the morning at 9-10 o'clock in the morning, and I thought to myself, I was like, I have nothing to do today, so let's see how far I can get. And at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like, wow, I actually have a real shot of beating this game. And so I played until about 12 o'clock at night. So that was... Wow, that would have been... No, yeah, that would have been 15 hours. 14, 15 hours.
Very nice. Very
of
nice.
playing video games. So yeah, no, that came close actually to the 17-hour one.
Almost dethroned it. Not quite, but
It was probably a little less than that if you take into account, eating lunch and dinner and bathroom and
sure.
other things
Stimulating yourself. Yeah.
to make myself. That sounds weird. To make
With caffeine.
Other things to make me not sound awful. Just sitting in my recliner playing Arkham Knight for 15 hours.
Stimulating yourself while you play Arkham Knight.
Yeah. So yeah, that was probably my second longest gaming session. All right, that was a lengthy. We talked for 30 minutes about RPGs.
That was actually those two of my topics. It was this longest gaming session and what makes an RPG great. So we knocked out two birds with a stone there.
Okay, cool. Well, for my topic, it's a doozy. And last night I went and saw Pixels with Adam Sandler and Kevin James.
Sure.
And it is marketed as a movie for gamers.
Question is, does it live up to the hype?
Exactly. A gamer's movie. Personally, it was an Adam Sandler movie. It wasn't. It's obviously not going to get an Oscar or an Emmy. And was it the funniest movie on the planet? No, but it had a lot of funny parts. There was a lot of parts where I busted out laughing watching it. It was cool to see Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and Mario and Paperboy and Frogger, all of these characters come
Bowser
to life.
In the movie?
No, Bowser is not in the movie.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm thinking of maybe Wreck-It Ralph. Wasn't he in Wreck-It Ralph?
He was in Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph was also a good
one.
quote unquote gamer movie.
Sure.
And I thought it was a cool movie. I mean, if you go into it expecting just to have like a fun time, not going to expecting some film gold, I thought it was a great movie. It was cool to see these characters that some of them I grew up with. I grew up with Frogger and Pac-Man, and obviously I wasn't born in the 80s, but I played these games when I was younger, and I played Tetris and stuff like that, and Mario. So it was cool to see these characters, in a movie theater on a big screen, and a lot of people have been dying to have these game movies made. Uncharted, Halo, everyone wants these movies to come to life from their video games. But here's the thing. I feel like every time someone, tries to get the ball rolling on this, everyone just shuts it down instantly. Like with Pixels, it got terrible reviews, saying like, it wasn't funny, and like, some of the characters were stupid, and like, why was, this video game character in it, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that takes away a lot of appeal from making a video game movie, because gamers are very critical of their beloved franchises.
Sure.
Hopping mediums.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get your take on video game movies, where you stand on them. What would make you want to see a video game movie? What franchises would you like to see be made into a movie?
That's an interesting question. First of all, I need to see Pixels, but I don't know if I'll enjoy it because I don't think Adam Sandler's funny. That's just me. I just every Adam Sandler movie, I know like Caddyshack's a classic and like whatever. I just don't think he's funny. I mean, that's just me. Like every time I see him, I just think he's being way too silly. And I get it, that's his MO, but maybe I'll give it a view. But in terms of video game movies, you know what? When I was a little kid, I always liked to see. I went out to see. I remember Pokemon movie 2000. I'm sure you remember when that came out too, with Mewtwo and
Yes.
Mew. Yep. And that was the big thing, and I begged my parents to take me to that, and I thought it was cool. And I remember you got a promotional, I think it was an Entei card, when you went to see the movie, or one of those early 2000s Pokemon movies. You got an Entei promo card. It was a Mew promo card, actually, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some sort of deal, the Ancient Mew. And so I begged my parents. I was like, I need to get this movie. I don't remember if it was in the DVD copy or when you bought the ticket, whatever. Anyway, I begged them for that, and I wanted to see it, and it was good, and I enjoyed it. But I was a kid, so like, was the movie that good? I mean, it was probably pretty similar to the anime, so I guess in the right eyes, it's good. But like, my thing with video game movies is I don't know, because like you said, it's so hard to jump mediums like that. Like I remember they were talking about making a Halo movie. And as cool as I think it would be to have a full CG Halo movie, it's like, can you really though sum up what will be 5 Halo games in a 2-hour movie?
Hmm.
And like, how would you pick what bits and pieces of the series you would, you know, you you would keep in the movie? Like, who's to say like you cut out the very beginning of the autumn and you cut that out of the movie and you just started a little bit later? Well, there will be people who are like, well, where the fuck was the fall of the autumn? You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
or there will be people who are like, didn't think there was enough of 4 represented because I thought 4 was a fantastic campaign. But there'll be people who are like, oh, why wasn't this in there? Why wasn't that in there? So you obviously won't please everyone. And like the question is, can you do it without it being a commercial failure? I mean, sure, people would go see a Halo movie just because it's a Halo movie, but you don't want to make it just to make it. At the same time, I think like a series like Uncharted would make a cool movie, and like the Last of Us movie. But at the same time, those games are so cinematic in themselves that it's like they already kind of are interactive
It's
movies in a way.
it's almost like watching a movie.
Yeah, it is, and like like a Heavy Rain movie. Like, would that be kind of cool? Sure, but I mean, like,
Jason
yeah, Jason. But even somebody who like
smashed
has,
by a car.
he did. He got annihilated. You don't even see it, and you know he got annihilated, just based off
Spoilers.
of the yeah. Well, it's early on, so
It's
but
also 5 years old.
that's true. But even somebody with like virtually no video game skill could play Heavy Rain and still experience that. And in that sense, it's almost a movie in itself. And like the time and the money that went into making that game was almost like the production of a movie. And like with difficulty levels now, I mean, like somebody could play through The Last of Us and get a true cinematic experience and play it on easy. And I mean, that's enough of a movie almost right there. There's so many cutscenes, and like nowadays you can like watch the entire cutscene, list just from start to finish and probably get the gist of the story.
It's funny you say that. I don't mean to interrupt your
No,
top
yeah,
or your point here,
please do.
but I was watching or not watching. I was playing Last of Us with my girlfriend. She loves watching Naughty Dog games. She's not a gamer at all. She plays Minecraft and that's about it. Um, and she has always loved watching me play Naughty Dog games. Like she loved watching me play all the Uncharted games, and she thought they were cool because they were so cinematic. And she wanted to see Last of Us, but we go to 2 different schools, so I wasn't gonna like wait and play Last of Us. And every time she came up, I was hours ahead of where she left off. So what we did was there's actually an option in The Last of Us on the PS4 remastered, which wasn't. I don't think it was in the PS3 edition. I'm not entirely sure. And you can just watch all the cutscenes. That's it. It's just all the cutscenes put together. So it is like watching a movie, just a lot longer.
And like obviously with those cinematic games that allow you to do shit like that are pretty much the ones you'd want a movie out of. And I think
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the case, but I think Master Chief Collection has options where you can watch the cinematics. And the remastered
Mm-hmm.
cinematics in Halo 2 look incredible, by the way. And so
Yeah.
you can sit there and you can watch all those cinematics, and like if you want the Halo movie, just watch all 4 of those. You know what I mean? And then I think like the question becomes thinking of like how expensive and how arduous of a process it would be to make like a full CG movie. I mean that would be incredibly difficult for folks to do, is to make, for 343 or whoever would be in charge of that, to make a movie out of that. That would just be an
Mm-hmm.
incredibly difficult process. And then if you started talking about like, actually casting characters for a movie, like in the Uncharted movie, like who the fuck would play the characters? Like you would have all kinds of situations of people being like, oh, why is, I don't know, fucking Liam Neeson, Nathan Drake. Like, I don't know. Like,
Liam Neeson.
he's the first one that came to mind because the Taken movies. I feel like there's a lot of overlap there.
You could have grabbed anyone, any like action star,
Well,
and like any young action star.
why?
Which
Why is Jack Black Nathan Drake?
Jack Black as Nathan Drake, gross. Um,
Hey,
that was okay.
Lena, I was thinking we need to go save the day. Oh, Nathan, you're so funny.
They actually have there's a rumor that I believe Nolan North spilled the beans on in like a Comic-Con panel or some shit, and he mentioned Mark Wahlberg playing Nathan Drake,
I can kind of see that.
which I can see that too, but I don't know. I feel like it's a little weird.
Mark
And that's
Wahlberg-
also another thing that people are so critical about.
Yeah.
Who will play your beloved character? Who will play Joel
Yeah.
from The Last of Us?
If Joel wasn't Frankie Muniz, I would be extremely upset. Let's just say that.
What? That is the first time Frankie Muniz has been relevant in the last 14 years.
He's making a comeback. You are treading on mighty thin ice, Ellie.
Ew. But anyway, in terms of video game movies, my thing with them is I think they're cool when they do weird one-off things like Pixels and Wreck-It Ralph. When it's cool just to see, you know, some of your favorite characters up on the big screen.
Almost like a
in place.
compilation sort of type thing.
Yeah, it's sort of an homage to them.
Yeah.
Anywhere that's not on their game, it's cool to see them somewhere else. However, I do agree. It is hard to put the 13-hour adventure of Nathan Drake into a 2.5-hour movie. That's very hard to do. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of scenes where people are going to be mad because their favorite scene wasn't in the movie, or this scene wasn't there, or this scene wasn't there. You know, why wasn't the train wreck from Uncharted 2 in the movie?
Here's an interesting point. If
Okay.
you talked about, you said, could you convert movie or games to movies? Think about this: you can't really convert movies to games. It usually doesn't work out. Like, just look at the
They're
fucking
always trash.
yeah. Look at the steaming turd that is Godzilla on the PS4. You know, good movie, awful game.
Dude, game of the year.
GOTY.
I will say, one of the coolest game or movie to games was X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Never played that.
It was cool. It was bloody. It was gory. It was the Wolverine game everyone wanted, but it had to stick to the stupid script of X-Men Origins Wolverine.
And there are the select few movie games that do it right. Just like there would be the select few games that do the transition to a movie right. But there
Yeah.
would be more failures than not. And it's just like the same as converting a movie to a game, I think. I think that both sides of that spectrum should stick to what they do best, which is how I view it.
Yeah, you know, everyone, you know, another genre to look at that clearly was a movie first and not a game first was Resident Evil.
Yeah.
The Resident Evil movies definitely inspired the games because that's how that timeline happened.
Yeah, those are and the Silent Hill movies.
Also, going back to what I was saying was, I think if you're going to do one-off stories, something new, something different, I think a movie's great for that.
Sure.
I think if you're gonna take like the Halo universe, for instance, and do an origin story for Master Chief, explain that.
Sure.
I think that'd be a cool 2-hour movie
Sure.
about how Master Chief came from being, you know, just John to becoming the Master Chief.
Yeah. Frankie
and
Muniz
obviously-
went from being John to this badass Spartan warrior. And he was, you know, he was living the Disney Channel life until a plasma grenade came in and stuck to his fucking leg, and then shit just hit the fan.
It sucks. It sucks that his fictional character has a better career than his actual one.
Hey, man.
But I think if you do one-off stories like that, I think that's really cool. I think that's interesting. World of Warcraft, the movie that's going to be coming out for that, I think is going to be phenomenal. Really, because I mean, there isn't really a story to World of Warcraft. There is, but like, it's not in the same sense as there's a linear story with Uncharted or Last of Us. I mean, yeah, there's an overarching story and there's themes to it, and there's a bunch of lore. But I think it's cool that they're taking, you know, bits of the lore out and making a movie out of it. But one medium that I think would be great for a video game is television. I think television is a perfect medium for a game. You know, if you think about it, you have a 12-hour game. Each mission, each level is an hour. You can take that hour and make it an episode. I think TV is a great medium for that kind of stuff.
I agree, and there's some good. There've been some good, decent TV shows based on games.
It wasn't really a TV show. It was a web series. But the Halo Forward Unto Dawn, that miniseries was great. Apparently Nightfall's good. I haven't watched it, but I heard Nightfall was good.
I hear good things about a couple of the. They're not necessarily just video. They were movies first, I guess, but the Star Wars cartoons are supposed to be good. There was a Sonic cartoon that ran for a while that was somewhat decent. And then there was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show way back in the day. Neither of which are huge commercial successes, but it shows that you can transverse that and have some degree of success in that you actually got it on TV.
Yeah, but I agree. If you were to get, I don't know many great TV producers, but if you were to get someone like the HBO guys on a Halo series or an Uncharted series, I think that would be huge. That would be a huge commercial success to have one of our favorite games broken up as a TV series. I think that would be fantastic, and I honestly think TV is the perfect medium to transfer a game into a different medium that's not a game, because you have so much more time to explain it.
Agreed.
And it also brings us to another point. Do you think we are coming up on a slew of video game movies? There's been talks of Halo. There's been talks of Uncharted. There's been talks of Last of Us. Do you think we're going to start seeing a bunch of video game movies soon?
I don't think that will ever be a super trendy thing. It's just my guess. I would say, because
Yeah.
I know that this Halo movie has been delayed for like 6 years. Because I remember hearing about this shit like when I was in high school. And so that leads me to believe that it's probably a process that people are very hesitant to start taking up. And could one of those big three happen? I could see that, but I don't know how commercially successful. It might be very commercially successful because it would sell just based on its name, but I don't know how well received it would be. And that leads me to believe it might scare off people from actually taking the expense of making more game movies. I think that there would be a lot of people who would be nervous about that transition going well, even if, say, a Halo movie comes out and does really well. I think it would still be a scary prospect for the financial backing of a game like The Last of Us to say, could we transition this to film? I'd say they'd still be a little bit nervous because it wouldn't be anywhere near this. It wouldn't be a CG sci-fi story. And so until you test those waters, you could never really know how it's going to do. You could guess and you could project, but you would never know how a, Mark Wahlberg Uncharted movie would ever go until it gets out in the public and then it has a chance to be a huge flop. And so I'd say that these people, in my guess, will probably stick to games, at least for the foreseeable future. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, and this was a topic I heard on another podcast, or not the topic itself, but just the fact that are we going to start seeing video game movies more now? And everyone says this is the time for comic books and superheroes, because they're just and it shows they have years planned out for all these different superhero movies coming out, and people are asking when is going to be the time for video games. And honestly, I don't think video game movies are ever going to catch on. I would like them to, and I would like them to all be good, but I mean in a perfect world, sure, but the reality of it is it's very risky to do that kind of thing with when you have a bunch of diehard fans who are really going to be the core audience of this movie. Those are going to be your most critical ones. I'm sure you'll get the people who are like, oh, Uncharted, the movie, what's that? Sure, let's go see that. And I mean, obviously, if it's made interesting enough with popular names, more people will go see it. It'll be like sort of the modern day Indiana Jones. But, the people that are going to be most vocal and the people that are going to be in the most seats are going to be the people who played Uncharted, and those are going to be the ones who make or break one of these movies. So I think until someone does it right, it'll be a while before we see a good video game movie and have them coming out consistently.
Sure. And times change, because I mean, there were probably times when people were like, we'll never have any good superhero movies. And then now look.
Just look at the 90s and early 2000s of superhero movies.
Sure.
The Michael Keaton Batman was cool, but it was campy. Batman and Robin was awful. Superman Returns is garbage. And it wasn't really until Batman Begins that kicked off this whole superhero franchise. I mean, sure, you had early things like Ang Lee's Hulk, which was all right. And then when you started seeing Iron Man and stuff like that, that's when it really started to catch on. But I think Batman Begins was really the start of this, where people started to take superheroes seriously.
Yeah.
And these movies could be huge hits.
And they had the means to do so. I mean, who knows, maybe in 10 years, making CG movies will be extremely easy and cost effective, and you can whip up a Halo movie in a matter of months. But, you know, who knows? I mean, there's just so many trends and shit like that you never know what's going to be the case in 10 years.
Yeah. All right. Good topic. And for our final topic of episode 2, we are 2 days away from one of the I don't mean biggest as in it's like the most groundbreaking re-release of a game. I mean biggest as in it's the most re-releases in one package. Rare Replay is coming out on Tuesday, and I know you are very excited for this, Corey.
I am.
I know you. I know you mentioned in last week's episode you're very excited for Rare Replay, and you're a Rare guy. But it brings up the discussion again of re-releases and remakes and HD remasters, and that whole dialogue gets brought up again.
Sure.
So I want to know how you feel about remakes, re-releases, HD remasters.
I'm on the fence with remasters and remixes and all of that, and it's becoming so trendy that I'm starting to take a stance on it. It honestly depends. The thing with me is if it's a collection, like Rare Replay is, I'm usually behind it, and I usually think it's money well spent. Another example of one that I thought was fantastic was the Genesis collection. And I had that on PS3, and the reason being is because I maybe played 2 or 3 of those games, but basically I was paying... Well, it went discount, so I was paying $20 for, 20 Genesis games. I think packages like that are awesome, particularly if they do what Genesis Collection did and what Rare Replay looks like they're going to do. And that's give you access to concept art, developer interviews, things like that. What I'm not okay with is the sudden influx of re-releases of games that were just out, a few years ago. Like the Gears of War re-release even seems a little bit wacky to me. The thing I do get about that is like, okay, you're bringing the online, which was awesome. You're bringing that to the Xbox One crowd. I think that's cool. But like that game was just out, and the same with Devil May Cry 4. Like that was a 360 game that was reasonably late in the life cycle. And then like now games like GoldenEye, when they re-released that on, was it 360 and Wii?
It came out on the Wii first, and then they did, I believe it was like GoldenEye Reloaded or something like that a couple years later on the 360.
And like with that, different developer, you took the idea and you retooled it completely. Okay, that's in itself a different experience. But if you're paying if you're paying full price, especially to experience a game that just came out, it just seems silly to me, and it seems like a cash grab. And it does make sense though sometimes. Like for me, the first time I played The Last of Us was the remastered version on PS4 because I just missed it last gen because I didn't have a PS3 I think when it came out, and I just kind of missed the boat on that game. So the remaster was a great way for me to revisit it because I never got to play the original, and I had the one best package right there with the remastered graphics and the grounded mode and all that stuff. So that was good. But if I had played The Last of Us on PS3, I might not have played the remastered version. So I don't know. I think sometimes they go a little bit too far, and it just feels like, you release a game and it's like, how long until the HD remaster? You know what I mean? Like, how long until we get the Arkham Knight, trilogy re-released as one? And that's another thing. Like, if you release a trilogy of games, that's one thing, because then it's like you can kind of go one stop and get them all. Like the Uncharted collection, when the Drake collection comes out, that's okay. Those are PS3 games, so it wasn't that long ago, but you're getting them all in one cohesive package. When it comes to things like Gears of War, you're just getting, one, and it's like, okay, that game came out, 7 years ago, something like that. More than that, I guess. But it's like you're getting one game, you're getting one experience. Same with Devil May Cry 4, but if you were to give me, the Devil May Cry package, and they're all there, and they're all remastered, okay, that's cool. Just as long as they're not glitchy as shit like the Silent Hill collection was. But, that's another discussion.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on it?
So I've gone back and forth on this, and what I've come to is HD remasters are great for when they are good for you. When an HD remaster is a game you love, it's perfect, fantastic, great. I love this. It's this is the best thing ever. And I've tried to take a step back from that, and what my opinion on everything is this: if it makes sense, if there's reason behind the remaster, I'm okay with it. With there's been a lot of HD remasters for the PlayStation 4, like with with Last of Us and with God of War. I understand why those were remastered for the PS4. God of War I understand less than The Last of Us, and that's because there was a huge, massive exodus from the Xbox 360 onto the PlayStation 4. A lot of gamers left Xbox because of the whole hullabaloo that went down with Xbox. So I understand why they did those remasters. Look, we have a bunch of new people. Let's get them into our IP. Let's get them into our games. Let's give them an Uncharted collection, a Last of Us remastered. With God of War, they should have given the entire collection, not just God of War 3. I don't understand why every single God of War game was not included with that. That would be an example of a remaster that doesn't make any sense. But when it has a purpose behind it, I understand. Borderlands: The Handsome Collection. It came out at the very end of the 360 and PS3 life cycle. I had an Xbox One and a PS4 when those came out, and I didn't have a 360. And I mean that's my fault because I sold my 360 to get my Xbox One. But then again, so does a lot of people. Sure. A lot of people do the trade route. Yeah. You did it. One of our buddies from college did it. It's the way to go when getting a new console if you're a young adult and you don't have expendable income. And I missed it. I missed the pre-sequel, and I think that remaster makes sense. And I was gonna say but Borderlands 2, I don't really get because that came out like 40 years ago. So like I understand why that would be dumb, but then again, the pre-sequel is the sequel to Borderlands 2, or it's not the sequel, it's the prologue to Borderlands 2. So I get why they included it, to get the full story, to understand it all. I get that. Games I don't understand at all would be things like Final Fantasy X and X-2 remastered for like the 8th time on the PS4. I like that that came out years ago, and it was already remastered on the PS3 and PS Vita, and that was remastered, I believe, 2 years ago. I want to say 2-3 years ago is when it was probably actually 2 years ago. Now I think about it, where it was remastered on the PS3, and at that time, it was the new consoles I believe were out 2 years ago. Would have been what, 2013? Yeah. Okay, no, so the consoles weren't out yet. They came out at the end of 2013. So yeah, that still was out by then. It didn't need to be brought to the PS4. We don't need to have. There was rumors of the Arkham games being brought over to the Xbox One and PS4. Those games just came out. I don't need those. I don't need those games. And will they be fun to play? Absolutely, but it's not something I need. It's not something that the industry needs right now, and it just seems like a way to grab some quick cash. And then there's also talks of having the Mass Effect trilogy re-released on Xbox One and PS4. That was a big rumor. Would I love that? Absolutely, because I it's been a couple years since I've played that series. I would love to play those games again. However, I understand that it is a dumb remaster, and I think we're gonna start seeing the remasters stop now that Microsoft has announced the backwards compatibility issue. So now developers literally they can just say, yeah, bring this game over, and no remasters have to happen. You can, if you want your game to be played, you can go ahead and bring it over. And I get that, and I think that's a great feature. I still think you're going to start seeing some more PlayStation exclusives being remastered again and brought over. I mean, and then at this point, I don't know really what major PlayStation franchise hasn't already been brought over. That's still an ongoing franchise. But remasters are a finicky thing with me. If they're something I like, then I'm all for it. But I understand why that they're stupid. So yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on remasters. With the Rare Replay in particular, I'm okay with that because those games are so freaking old. Like, I'm okay with a collection like that. But yeah, I just think if the remasters make sense, then I'm all for them.
Sure, I'm in agreement there.
Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the final topic of episode 2, which brings our show to a close. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Hopefully it was more interesting than last week. We actually had topics this week and not just talked about ourselves for an hour.
Sure.
So just to close out the show, the rigmarole of how to get us and how to get our podcast. Right now we are only on YouTube, and that is because I said last week that we were going to be on iTunes, but iTunes is actually not an easy thing to do. So we're trying to figure out how to get our podcast on iTunes and how to get that process going along. And we're also looking into putting the podcast up on things like SoundCloud and Bandcamp and stuff like that. So right now the place to find us is on YouTube, but very soon we will be available on more platforms and more ways to find us. So yeah. Thank you for watching episode 2. Hope to see you next week.